Test. Test.
I'll put a couple of them over there.
Test 1 2.
All right. We'll get started here. Thank you, everybody, for attending this January 30, 2023 meeting of the Homewood City Council. We don't have any resolutions tonight, so I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. We are going to start with an invocation by Councilor Jones. If everyone will please stand, and it will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you'll bow your heads with me. Thank you, Lord, for all of our many blessings that you've bestowed on the city. Thank you for all of the city employees that protect us and provide city services to all of our constituents. And we thank you for this city council before us here and the ability to serve our neighbors. We always remember those who are in need, and may we be respectful in all of our discussions tonight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Everyone will face the flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones.
You're welcome.
Ms. Salter, if you will please call roll.
Yes, sir. Counselor Gwaltney?
Here.
Counselor Gear?
Here.
Counselor Alderman?
Here.
Counselor Wolverton? Here. Counselor Sims?
Here.
Counselor Jones?
Here.
Counselor Smith? Counselor Nelms?
Here.
Counselor Andrus?
Here.
Counselor Harden?
Here.
And President Wyatt.
Here.
You got everybody here? You got a quorum?
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the reading of the minutes from our council meeting of January 9, 2023. Those have been previously distributed. I would entertain a motion and a second to dispense with the reading of said minutes and for approval of the same.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Gwaltney, second by Ms. Gear. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved 11-0. Next, we have board vacancies. We've got a few of these to deal with tonight. First, we have a Ward 4 HEC position that needs to be opened. I looked at my Ward 4 people and my HEC liaison. How long would y'all like that to be open for?
Probably,
I don't remember if they give a definitive, but it didn't sound like they had anybody specifically that had,
No, I
that was
think
ready to apply, so
they
I was
just, yeah,
leaning towards
I'd say
maybe.
in a month.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
February 27th?
That sounds good.
All right, so we will open that till February 27th at 4:30 PM.
okay, yes, sir.
All right, next we have a Ward 1 BZA that closed today that we need to reopen. I would suggest that we reopen that tonight, but that we just open it for 2 weeks. So unless the Ward 1 reps have a problem, February 13th at 4:30?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will close that at February 13th at 4:30 PM. All right, next we have a Ward 5 BZA position. We've gotten 2 applicants for that position, so we'll need to set interviews. Do y'all have an idea about when you want to do those interviews?
Can we also set them on the same night that we set the park board interviews?
We can, especially since it's a Ward 5. Both
yeah.
are Ward 5.
Yep.
I'm
Knock
out
them
of town most of next week.
Okay, I mean, this week, is it
I could
too
do it.
quick this week?
We can try for this week. We got to make sure they're available. So, you know,
Later, like Thursday, I think.
Thursday, I can, yeah, Thursday. You wanna try Thursday?
Yeah, we'll try, and then if there's any problems, I'll let you know. When do y'all
Okay,
want to
great.
start?
If we
You
could
need-
stack them all up, that'd
you
be
need
awesome.
15 minutes in interview,
Oh, yeah.
So,
5:30, 5 o'clock?
5:30 to 6:30.
5:30 to 6:30.
yep, I forgot what the date is y'all going to that conference.
That's March.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
so-
it's March.
So you want to try for this Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30?
Yes, and
Yeah.
to stack up the Ward 5 BZA and the park board,
In 15-minute
15-minute
increments?
increments.
Okay.
All right. Thank y'all very much. So that takes care of both the Ward 5 BZA and the Ward 5 Park Board that closed that also had 2 applicants. All right, I believe that's it for board vacancies tonight. We do have one item to amend on the agenda. We're going to drop an item from the committee referral agenda. You about to tell me something?
2-2. Okay.
It's still open? Yeah. Okay. All right. So going back to the amendment of the agenda, we're going to drop an item from committee referral. It's item 150123, a bid opening set for February 2, 2023 for Homewood Public Library, new finishes Phase 2. That item needs to be dropped because that money has already been allotted in the budget, so it's already theirs. If it's over budget, they will come back to us, but otherwise, they will handle the bid.
Motion to drop.
Second.
All right, motion from Ms. Smith, second from Ms. Andrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is 11-0, and just, this may be a little bit of a belt and suspender thing, but I would entertain a motion and a second for approval of the amended agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Wolverton, a second from Ms. Andrus. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved 11-0. Which brings us to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gwaltney, second by Mr. Almond. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is also approved 11-0, which brings us to our old business agenda. The first item, 12/11/22, bid opening held January 23, 2023 at 4:45 PM for street signs, brought to us by Randy Hambley. And we'll start with a report from Finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met on January 23rd, last Monday. We have a lot of items here, so I look forward to reporting those. For this particular item, after the bid opening was held at 4:45, we had the report from Randy Hambley. The committee voted 4-0 to recommend accepting the bid from Brandon Industries as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. That's coming out of account number 12-22-589-382, and the amount of $77,256. 4-0.
All right, so we have a motion from finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved 11-0 and will be resolution 2306. Next item, 06-1222, request for final budget amendments for fiscal year 21-22 budgets and budget amendments for fiscal year 22-23 budget for outstanding encumbrances, brought to us by Robert Brigette and Melody Salter. Another report from finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I failed to mention on the previous item, we were under budget, so I always want to mention that. For this particular item, the committee met and voted 4-0 to recommend approval, so 4-0 out of finance.
All right, another motion from finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is also 11-0 and will be resolution 2307. Next item, 010123, request for consideration to declare the following item surplus: a 1993 International dump truck, last four of the VIN 5427 2005 International dump truck with the last four digits 3020, a 2004 Ford F-150, last four of that VIN 2203, 2006 International, last four 2170, 2001 Caterpillar backhoe, last four 1086, and ZEP parts washer and miscellaneous items from the mayor's office, brought to us by Gordon James of our Fleet Maintenance Department and Melody Salter. And another report from Finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. For this ordinance, the committee voted 4-0 to recommend approval.
All right. Mr. Kendrick, if you give us a first reading.
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to declare certain property as surplus, hereby established and declared the following described personal property of the city is no longer needed for public or municipal purpose and therefore declared surplus property to wit. 1993 International dump truck with a VIN number already previously identified by Mr. White. A 2005 International dump truck with a VIN previously identified by Mr. White. 2004 Ford F-150 truck with a VIN number last four 2203. A 2006 International with a VIN number 2170. 2001 Caterpillar backhoe with VIN number 1086, last four, and a ZEP parts washer with the VIN number 4236, and a miscellaneous items from the mayor's office. Section 2, the mayor and the clerk be authorized and directed to dispose of the property by auction to the highest bidder.
All right, thank you very much. I would now entertain a motion and a second for unanimous consent. All right, motion by Mr. Sims, second by Mr. Gwaltney, and a roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney,
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear,
Yes.
Counselor Allamon,
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton,
Yes.
Counselor Sims,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Nelms,
Yes.
Counselor Andrus.
Yes.
Counselor Harden.
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. All right, so that is 11-0, and now I'd entertain a motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Nelms, and another roll call vote, please, Ms. Salter.
Counselor Gwaltney,
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Gear,
Yes.
Counselor Allamon,
Yes.
Counselor Wolverton,
Yes.
Counselor Sims.
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Smith,
Yes.
Counselor Nelms,
Yes.
Counselor Andrus,
Yes.
Counselor Harden.
Yes.
And President Wyatt.
Yes. All right, so that passes 11-0 and will be ordinance 2860. Next item, 020123, request to amend contract with CBA Construction LLC for Mecca Avenue Sidewalk Project, brought to us by Cale Smith, and another report from Finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee voted 4-0 for approval of this item, and I'll just mention this was the one where we were moving money from one item to another, so there's no additional funding necessary, mainly a transfer.
All right, thank you very much. So we have a motion from Finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is 11-0 and will be resolution 2308. Next item, 030123, request to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Twin Construction, Inc. for the construction of a retaining wall on Mecca Avenue, also brought to us by Cale Smith, and another report from Finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. This is the other item for the transfer. So the committee met and voted 4-0 for approval of this item.
All right, we have another motion from Finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is also 11-0, and will be Resolution 2309. Next item, 080123, request to authorize the mayor to sign contract with Gossett Construction LLC to repair a storm pipe at 1604 Mountain Gap Circle, brought to us by Cale Smith. And another report from Finance, Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The committee met, voted 4-0 to recommend approval of this item. This is coming from ARPA funds.
All right, we have another motion from Finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is also 11-0, and will be Resolution 2310. Next item, 090123, request to consider insurance renewal for both property casualty and workers' compensation insurance, brought to us by Robert Burgett and Melody Salter. And Mr. Jones, you're up again.
Last item, Mr. President, the committee met, voted 4-0 for approval of this item.
All right, we have another motion from Finance. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is also 11-0, and will be Resolution 2311. Next item, 100123, request to consider use of Soho Plaza for Homewood Athletic Foundation Cornhole Tournament, brought to us by Aaron Yost and myself. And we'll start this time with a report from Special Issues, Ms. Smith.
Yes, committee met last week and heard from Aaron Yost, who I believe is the chairperson for the cornhole event, and from Jeremy Bernstein, who is the president of the Athletic Foundation Board. And the committee voted 4-0 to recommend approving the item. Motion was made by Ms. Andrus and seconded by Mr. Sims.
All right, we have a motion from Special Issues. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved 11-0, and will be Resolution 2312. Next item, 170522, request to consider revisions to the membership structure of the Arts Advisory Council, brought to us by Melanie Gear and myself, and another report from Special Issues, Ms. Smith.
Yes, almost forgot about this one. This item had been on the table in the committee, so first of all, the committee voted to take it off the table. And then we voted 4-0 to recommend adjusting the membership, which is really just adding some additional at-large positions to the commission and making those adjustments to the makeup and to the membership. And we voted 4-0 to recommend approving that. Motion was made by Ms. Gear and seconded by Mr. Sims.
All right, so we have another motion from Special Issues. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is also 11-0, and will be Resolution 2313. Next item, 101222, public hearing set for tonight for consideration to rezone 3101 Overton Drive from NPD to an R7 attached dwelling unit district. This is brought to us by the applicant owner, Jenny Allen, to permit the construction of a 4-unit townhouse development. This also comes through the Planning Commission, which had a vote of 0-7 unfavorable recommendation for the item. And we will start with a report from P&D. Ms. Andrus.
Yes, the committee met last week and voted 4-0 to refer this item back to the full council without recommendation pending the public hearing. After hearing from the following residents: James Saransky, Sarah Shoemaker, Jim Shaw, Mackenzie Cohn, Walter Johnson, Forrest Walden, Mike Hubbard, and Jeremy Berman. The motion was made by Councilor Sims and seconded by Councilor Nelps.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I know we have a number of people here tonight to speak to this item.
I have a sign-in sheet here. I didn't know if it might make it easier to come here.
It
and have
would
to go
make
there.
it much easier. So if you will, everyone that's going to speak needs to sign in. If you'll come to Ms. Salter first, you can sign in while the person in front of you is going ahead and speaking. And we'll try to move as efficiently through this as we can. Because we have a number of people, we'll do what we normally do when we've got this situation. I'm going to limit the comments to 3 minutes each, and so plan accordingly. We will start with Ms. Allen in the public hearing so that she can make the presentation so everyone has the benefit of that before making their comments and before the council hears those comments. So one last point that I will make. The only item about this that is before us is the zoning. So I would ask that you try to limit your comments to the zoning question, because that's the item that's actually before us. That's the only thing that we can consider. That's the only thing that we can make a decision about. So please do your best to tailor your comments to that. So with that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing and ask Ms. Allen to come on up. And I know you've got your architect here. Come on, y'all can feel free to come up together. But if you will, just sign in
If they want
first.
to sign in that one, it'll be okay. I just thought the public can do this one, whatever you want to do.
Oh, okay.
You might, I know you were here the other night, but you might say your name one more time.
Jamie Shransky.
Sorry.
Jamie Shransky.
Okay.
And I'm Jenny Allen. 3101 Overton Drive. I was unable to be here on the 23rd due to COVID. But I've watched the video and I have certainly been filled in by Mr. Shransky. And I first want to thank you all for your public service. I have a son who's a councilman, and I know how difficult the task this is. So I appreciate your being here, and I thank Mr. Kendrick for putting the definition of an alley on.
I'm sorry, can you move that microphone a little bit closer to you?
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can y'all hear it now? Got it. Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt the applicant, but the definition's in the zoning ordinance. It's not my definition.
Well, no, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think we're going to have a slide of our zoning. My request is to rescind the NPD classification. And as you can see, I'm the circled property right there. My border on the south is an alley. The border on the west is Overton Drive. The north is Oxmoor Road. And the only property line I share is a 189-foot line with R7, Mayfair Circle. Mayfair Circle, I think, was built about 30 years ago. And clearly, it's part of the business district, that stretch of Oxmoor. From the Overton to the Piggly Wiggly, everything along that line is, as you can see in the pink, commercial C1 kind of somethings, and then the orange is the R7. And that's what I'm requesting, so that I will align with all the other properties that face Oxmoor Road. The confusing part on the NPD is that my house faces Overton. So when it was assigned that classification, it was just a matter of, there was nothing malicious about it, but someone was just looking at the house and the orientation of the house and not the lot, the land survey, and not the fact that I wasn't adjoining any NPD property. As you go along, you will see all sorts of different buildings, all sorts of different functions. But right across from Crescent Avenue is literally my breakfast room window. And in this anticipation, I did consider a C1, which is on the other side of Mayfair Circle, but that doesn't fit as well. By far, the R7 is a more logical designation. It will become 4-unit townhomes, age in place, which is something I need along with other people in the community, and it will be a very residential feel to it, separating and being a buffer to the business area and Crescent is all commercial. And you can see all commercial is there, and I'm just kind of an outlier as an NPD. The most interesting thing about this is that Shades Cahaba School is what has driven this business district bordering from Huntington Road north, where it all becomes commercial and multifamily. And south, you can see all the tan houses are the single-family NPD. Shades Cahaba high school started in 1920, and the importance of the alley as a boundary was put in place in 1929. And since then, the city leaders have honored that and kept everything either see something's commercial or multifamily. So that's why it's more logical to be an R7, and that's why we are requesting it.
Okay.
Well, my name is Jamie Shransky. I work at Israel and Associates, and Jenny came to me with the proposition that she wanted to see if we could get this zoning changed to R7. And at first, I was kind of reluctant to that. We do primarily residential homes and have for 30 some odd years here in Homewood at least. So with that, I kind of looked at it with you know, a bit of skepticism, I guess, at first. But if we could pull that slide back up that was here a second ago. I'd never really investigated or looked at this from a planning standpoint. You know, I've worked on single-family homes many times and helped them add on to them, and we never requested any sort of zoning changes or anything of that nature. But having seen it and understanding what these different classifications mean, and digging into a bit of the history of it, it was interesting how this is developed and how Homewood's evolved even the time that I've spent here. I can remember when the building that we're in was Huffstutler's was here. So I can see how things evolve and change over time, and it's for the benefit of the community is the real reason behind a lot of this and the development. There's some zoning that's already along there, the pink, that's maybe small single-family homes that are being used as businesses. Mayfair, for instance, it came after NPD was created and was, I'm not sure what it was zoned prior to this, because the zoning might have had some different terminology that was being tossed around. But at the time the Mayfair was developed in the 90s, it actually probably was changed to R7 at that point in time. Again, NPD, you know, there's a lot of NPD here, and NPD is great, and I'm not looking to promote changing an NPD that's buried in a neighborhood, because that really is a detriment to the neighborhood to put, like, let's just put an R7, like plop in the middle of NPD territory, because that's what you don't see in these maps. They just continue on and on, NPD, NPD, NPD. But things change. Obviously, they've changed. The school that y'all were referencing, the Shades Cahaba, was once a high school. Huntington Road was a place where people would traverse to school. They didn't have vehicles. All the children in high school didn't have vehicles back then. So they would walk Huntington Road, and they would cut through the alley that's there, backing up to Mayfair Drive and over to Overton, so that they could connect to their own homes and wherever they would be going from there, maybe to the church grounds at that point in time. So anyway, I learned a little bit more of that as we dug in, and so I was kind of understanding it better, and understanding that it also is a dead ends. The commercial district that Crescent is like the only property that I could find where the road didn't just continue on and it died into a residential home. And so what Ms. Allen here deals with a lot of times and says is that the lights from people parked at Crescent Avenue shine into her home. You know, well, I don't know that many other people have that. I don't know that many other properties have 5 homes behind their one home. I mean, I looked the maps over, and maybe somebody else could point that out to me, but I couldn't find one single NPD property that sits on Axmore Road and has 5 residences that share a property line with it behind her. Again, what we're requesting is still a residential property, you know, at this point in time, because if you look around across the road at Oxmoor, all that pink area, that's all commercial. 18th Street wouldn't be what 18th Street was if both sides weren't commercial property. I mean, it would become a strip mall, one-sided strip mall. So in a way, I look at it from seeing this was very enlightening. And it's very understandable how Ms. Allen could ask or want to have the same opportunities that Mayfair did in developing an R7 that's actually developed in a manner that would actually promote community, because that's an inward-facing community. That's something that they might have done in the 90s that seemed like appropriate at the time, but everything's inward-facing. Everything's a garage door on the street. That's not what we're promoting here, because R7 now puts parking in the rear. It hides the parking from the street. Everything that faces the public right-of-way would be porches. It would be addressing the community. It would leave space for property, trees, development of a neighborhood, and maintain that neighborhood look as you turn this corner. But put something there that addresses both Oxmoor and Overton, because that's where it is. It's a corner lot. So a corner property is tasked with that challenge. And the challenge here is, how can you do it so that it doesn't disrupt the continuity of the neighborhood and actually promotes more community? So as we're looking at this, there were some questions that came up about how different it might be from NPD. And some talked about lot coverage. Right now, NPD is limited to 50% lot coverage. So 50, if we just leave that slide up, because I'd rather look at that drawing than myself, if you don't mind. But that, because I can point to that a little bit more, but the slide that was up there just now, the site plan, yes. So this is the proposed site plan if it were approved as an R7. Again, we developed this just to kind of show you how it would sit on the lot. The differences between this and our NPD is very minimal, if nothing to speak of. But the lot coverage, they say there's no limit to lot coverage for an R7, which I believe is true. I haven't got a full representation of that, but lot coverage on an NPD is 50% lot coverage. That's with the residence itself. And many residences around here push that envelope of 50% lot coverage. That's not for all impervious, as some people have stated. Impervious that's a different category of coverage. So with that, ours right now, if it were to be developed the way that it's drawn, the lot coverage on it would be, lost my place. It would be only, I am sorry, a 37.9% lot coverage. So with that, not saying that we want paving, but there is some paving to get to the rear parking. What we're trying to do is what was brought up by city engineers, is that there is this alley that is shared property. It's public right-of-way. There's a definition that we found and point to. Initially, we did not have this as part of our scheme to get onto this property, because we know that the neighboring homeowner has kind of claimed that as his own driveway, and he is using it as his driveway and has for the last 17 years. He'll probably remind us of that. But that still doesn't take away the fact that that's city property. And there's some beauty in that alley and how it connects to the 30-foot alley on the opposite side that came up in all this discussion. It almost is a bigger concern, and I won't get into it too much, but there's a 30-foot alley just beyond this 10-foot alley that connects to Huntington and Whitehall that children could pass through, homeowners could use as a pedestrian pathway, even if it was used for occasional cars like Mr. Shaw or Miss Allen's development here, or Mr. Walden's on the other side, is that it would be a much safer pathway than that current sidewalk, if anybody's walked that one there on Oxmoor. It's only about 4 feet wide. There's no barrier between you and the road. And then Miss Allen's property currently falls away from that sidewalk and to like a ravine-like situation. And so there's light poles in there, there's power poles in there, there's all sorts of obstacles. So if I had a young child, like a lot of people in Homewood have, I don't know that I would use that path to get from point A to point B. But to get back to this, the reasonings for some of this slide is to just show the setbacks. So the setbacks here that we're tasked with are 24 feet if it's approved as R7 along the front, and the main front, as we were told by the engineering department would be the one along Overton. And so the main front would be 24-foot setback. The secondary would be the one along Oxmoor, and it would be the 9-foot. And then the one that abuts a differing zoning would be 12 feet, and that would be the one that abuts the alley. And then the one in the rear could be 0. We don't see how that would be possible. We're not even looking for that. What we're doing is we're using a 20-foot approximate setback there, with the small exception of that part of Unit 1A. And that's primarily tasked with scaling the property down a little bit on that end towards the current R7, and also to block the view into the access to those parking areas from Overton. If that were not there, that could be a pathway for more stormwater to migrate into the property and across the property over to Mr. Shaw's property off of Oxmoor, similar to what's happened with the Mayfair development. Because the Mayfair development, President of the Homeowners Association, Mr. Hubbard, actually told us that it has caused problems. It has a lot coverage issue with the way that that was developed. And there's a lot of asphalt over there, there's a lot of homes, and it's all downhill. So it all runs across what's a 30-foot alley that's been taken over by Mr. Walden. He's using that currently as his driveway, his sole driveway. He's paved it and using it for his own personal use.
No, thank you.
I remember you prefaced your remarks with, we're talking about the property, not.
We are, but it's part of the community.
You're talking about other properties that are.
Yeah, here's what I want us to do. I mean, I've given you some leeway to talk about it. I think you've described the alley, you've described what we're really talking about here is use. And so what I would like us to do is to get back to use and see if there's anything else you have to discuss with regard to use.
Okay.
Because that's the issue that's before us.
I would just like to say that as far as use goes, if we could focus back on the zoning map, there's the 189-foot property line that's the only shared line. To the east of that line is R7 and has been successful for 30 years. My property, which is very similar as far as I have lot 4, lot 3, and partial lot 2. The balance of lot 2 became Overton Drive. That property has always faced Oxmoor. It has never faced Overton. And that's part of what the confusion was with this NPD. So if we could rescind the NPD and make it equal in treatment to the property on the east side of that 189-foot line is what I'm requesting.
Okay.
Equal treatment, equal rights to that property that's already been given every other property from facing Oxmoor from the back of the pig to Overton Drive.
Okay. While y'all are standing there, let me ask this. Does anyone have questions or comments while Ms. Allen and Mr. Shansky are up here?
Yes, I do have one or two. I understand, and you and I have talked about this multiple times, and I do have one question about, we keep talking about how the lots are oriented toward Oxmoor Road, and I know that they are. I have the map, I know that that's the case, but the development itself is not. You're orienting the development exactly as your house is oriented today, which is facing Overton Drive, which to me, that means the mailboxes are going to be on Overton Drive. The building is facing Overton Drive. That to me is an Overton Drive address. So that's one thing that I had wanted to mention. And I think this might be too early in the discussion for this, but as I've looked at this and thought about it, and I do understand exactly what you want, and you have some really good points. I do agree with that. I do think that I'm not really looking at the today, tomorrow, next week scenarios. I'm looking at the 10 to 15 years scenarios when maybe you're not there anymore, but the rezone is done. And once a rezone is done, unless somebody comes back and asks for it to be unrezoned, it's gonna stay that way. And somebody who comes in there might not have the same good intentions that you have, and they might not have the same thought process going into it that you have. And at that point, it's too late because it is what it is. So that's kind of where I am, but I do think that the fact that the development as it sits today is oriented toward Oxmoor and not, toward Overton and not Oxmoor is kind of a contradiction, because we're saying, well, the lots face Oxmoor, but the development certainly isn't. So that's kind of
Well, we had.
my question.
That has come up before, and zoning is the one that wanted it to face Overton. Because I had mentioned what direction is it going to face. And they did not want curb cuts, and they didn't want any more immediate traffic on Oxmoor. And that's why,
Well, just because the units are oriented toward Oxmoor doesn't mean the parking would have to come in from Oxmoor. I mean, you could still do a driveway around the back. I'm just saying, I think that's partly what people are thinking is, well, if your lots are facing Oxmoor, then face those buildings toward Oxmoor, because otherwise it's just another Overton residence.
Okay.
well, Ms. Williams said in the December 13th meeting that the primary front was Overton, and therefore the townhomes should face Overton. So I think that's what was directing us. It can change, and if it needs to change, but I don't think that I think the property is going to be a huge asset as far as age-in-place townhomes go.
All right.
And just to add, it is, I guess, the main focus of those is to face in both directions. I mean, we have porches facing both directions. It's not like a blank front along Oxmoor. So it's not like that we're not addressing Oxmoor Road at all. We just can't have vehicular traffic that traverses into the property at that location. So it made more sense, after talking to the engineering department and everybody else, to orient things in the manner that we've shown them. Again, we're not ignoring Oxmoor Road, because it's an important part here to everything. It's a corner lot. It's like, if you've seen a corner lot, it really does need to have both faces developed, just out of respect for those two streets. You can't just, if it was mid-block, it'd be a whole different story. We wouldn't even have this discussion, but it is on a corner, and we are addressing both elevations.
All right. Mr. Jones?
I just had a quick question. Is there one person that supports this that you know of?
You're talking about
I
from the
went back and
neighborhood?
read the minutes from the planning commission. I couldn't find anyone that supported this. I'm just wondering, is there anyone that you've ever talked to that is in support of this?
There are actually many people in support of this. I have
Do you have them that I can see?
I have not presented them to you. Is
Well,
that
I
what
mean,
you
that would
need?
help me, because I've gotten an overwhelming number, and obviously everyone in the chamber here, but it would help me if you have people that truly support this, this change from the planning commission.
I've requested a similar change back in 2019, and it was rejected.
Okay.
At that time, I stepped back and looked at how the structure was done, and I educated myself as to how planning and zoning and all of these things worked. And I learned a great deal. And my experience has shown me that at a public hearing, by far, the vast majority is in opposition. And people who send letters are in opposition. But definitely, I have realtors I've spoken with that this is a wonderful idea. Land management attorney said this is a product that is not available, and realtors have said this would be in high demand.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wolverton, did you have something?
Yeah. Brian, are you able to pull up the schematic of the 4 units for me real quick? So, I know you've mentioned aging in place. as being a driver for
Right.
the development. I'm assuming these are two. I think somewhere I saw 2 units or two-story units. Is that correct?
Exactly, with private
4
elevators.
units, 2 stories. Each unit's 2 stories, and there's parking underneath, is what I believe
Yes.
we
Right.
discussed last week. And how are you going to get?
There's a private elevator
Okay.
in each unit, in
Okay.
each garage.
Okay.
That will take that resident up to the second floor, or first floor, second floor.
Is there any living space on the ground floor?
No, other
Okay.
than
There's
a small
store-
vestibule for the elevator to get up
Gotcha.
and the stairwell.
Okay.
And
Get
some
up.
storage.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is in therapy, so I see a lot of
It's-
patients in the hospital that don't do well with stairs,
Well, I have
especially
2
at
artificial
an older
knees.
age. So
So I guarantee you, an elevator is very important to me.
Okay.
Yes. And
there
it's-
won't be any stairs for any of these units.
No stairs.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Well, they're required to have stairs, from a code standpoint. It's not purely elevators. but
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
They will all have elevators. I
Stairs
guess
from
it's more the
parking
fact.
area up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
They will, in
Right.
addition to the staircase, they would have elevators.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else on council have any questions or comments? All right. Thank y'all very much. If everyone else wants to start to come up, if you'll just sign in front of Mr. Segrist right there, and then you come up and speak, and I will start the clock as necessary.
Thank you, Michelle.
First of all, I want to thank y'all for taking time to listen to me and listen to what I have to say regarding this zoning issue, and I'll try to be as quickly as possible. My name is Jim Shaw, and my wife Martha and I live next door to Ms. Allen. My opposition to her rezoning request is going to focus on showing you that Ms. Allen is not only my direct neighbor with no physical barrier, but her lot has always been a part of Overton subdivision and street. Everything I mention here is based upon research from the Jefferson County parcel map and tax building records and information from City Hall. Now, Overton Drive started its development around the mid-30s based on records. My house and Ms. Allen's house were the 2 of the first homes constructed in the 40s to mid-40s, and with the house across the street being built in 1945. Most homes were built on the street during that time period, with the exception of a few, and all homes and primary addresses faced Overton. This shows that 3101, Ms. Allen's address, began its existence in the Overton subdivision, and some might argue it was one of the first. In 1988, all homes on Overton Drive entered into NPD ordinance set by the city of Homewood. In 1996, Mayfair Circle began their construction, and their R7 zone was set for the new enclave. I purchased my home in 2005 as an NPD, and Ms. Allen purchased her home in 2013 as an NPD zone lot. At this point, Overton Drive had been zoned NPD for 25 years. It was in 2019 that the applicant, Ms. Allen, began this process of attempting to rezone a home that was one of the original NPD locations set by Homewood in 1988. This should help show you that not only is my neighbor a part of Overton and the NPD, but her lot was one of the original homes in the 1940s to start our street being developed, as Mayfair Circle didn't come into existence until the 90s. Finally, I just want to say this, I know Ms. Allen she desires, as she says, to age in place, just as we all do. And I'll gladly support her if she wants to do this on her property. We just don't want to do it to support it times 4. supporting it times 4 to the detriment of the Overton Mayfair neighbors and the neighborhood itself. Thank you again, and in closing, I'd like to ask the audience, all of you who are in the audience, if you oppose Ms. Allen's proposal to change her current NPD zoning to R7, would you mind standing if you oppose it? Thank you, and I really appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you, and I'd like to yield to my neighbor, Mackenzie Cohn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, City Council members. My name is Mackenzie Cohen, and my husband and 2 children live across the street from Miss Allen at 3100 Overton Drive. We are also the corner lot. I will integrate some of the history you just heard, research from City Hall, and the Jefferson County parcel records into the current Homewood zoning ordinance to support this opposition. The MPD is intended to recognize historical patterns and densities of residential subdivisions and encourage the continuation of homogeneous development patterns. Number 1, encouragement of continuation. Her application states for her lot to have the same opportunity for the R7 zone behind her lot. First, her house was built in 1940 and the zone behind her lot was established in the 90s. Second, her lot has always been zoned residential since 1940, then MPD in 1988. The R7 behind her was an empty lot. It was actually zoned agriculture until it was developed in the 90s, 50 years after her house was built. There is absolutely nothing continuous about these 2 zones, thus contradicting the encouragement of continuation statement. 2, recognize historical patterns and homogeneous development patterns. 3101 Overton Drive and other neighboring lots, including mine, started the homogeneous development pattern of our street. In 1988, this pattern was recognized through the city with the emergence of the MPD. On 2 accounts, Ms. Allen has both recognized and complied with MPD ordinance. Number 1, when she purchased the home in 2013, it was an MPD. 2, when she remodeled her home, she most likely had to adhere to recognizing the historical and homogeneous patterns of the MPD lot. However, her new application completely disregards her past recognition of this city ordinance. 3, densities of residential subdivision. Converting an existing single home lot to an R7 immediately multiplies population density and increases traffic patterns. Oxmoor turning onto Overton is already considered a stress street by the city. The city has 2 city signs labeled local traffic only and children at play to reduce traffic, especially for children without sidewalks. The original intent when designing the street was not intended to support the density change an R7 would bring. In conclusion, approval of Ms. Allen's proposal only benefits Ms. Allen. This process has already included a 0-7 non-approval vote from the Planning Commission and a non-approval recommendation to the City Council. This process has shown 100% residential opposition from her direct neighbors, Overton Drive, and extremely large opposition from the surrounding neighborhood. In accordance with my research, the City Council has never converted an MPD zone into another zone since it was established in 1988. We would also support any changes she would need to make within the current single-family MPD ordinances. Thank you to the community behind me. Thank you to you. And I would like to yield to Jeremy Berman, my direct neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Jeremy Berman at 3106 Overton Drive, as Mackenzie said, her direct neighbor. A lot of what I was going to mention today was about the development facing Overton Drive. Councilwoman Smith has addressed that already, so all I'm really going to add is that I agree with what she has a read on this situation, and then reiterate that the NPD district in the zoning ordinance in part is in place to recognize historical patterns. And similar to what my neighbors have said, my house was built in 1935, which I believe was the very first one. We're just catty corner from Mrs. Allen. Her lot has been a part of Homewood Homewood's NPD, or historical district neighborhood since the beginning of Homewood. And not only has that lot been a part of Homewood since the beginning, but as mentioned, has been zoned NPD for 35 years now. If that's not a historical pattern to be recognized, I don't know what it is. And so that's all I really have to say today. Appreciate y'all's time and everyone in the community supporting, and I'll yield my time to Mr. Hubbard of Mayfair Circle.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Mike Hubbard. I live at 520 Mayfair Circle. I'm current president of the Mayfair Circle Homeowners Association. We are 100% against changing from NPD to R7. I could stand here and talk a few things about some of the things that the architect mentioned, but you asked about NPD. We're opposed to it being changed.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Christy Wilson, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Wilson, and my husband and I have lived at 3112 Overton Drive for 35 years this past summer. We've seen a lot of people come and go over the years. We bought our house from Mr. and Miss Upshaw, who originally built our house. They were the owners before us. He had actually built 4 other houses on our street. I believe actually the house that Jenny now resides in was one of the homes that he had originally built. We've been there, we've watched Mr. Zimmerman, he was a previous owner in Jenny's house. He lived there until his late 80s and 90s, just as Mr. Upshaw had lived in our house, until health reasons had them look at other options and move. Mr. Zimmerman had built a ramp at the house where Jenny previously lives, and to help have his accessibility into that house. My husband, along with many others in this room, are also, aging, and along with so many other hundreds in the city of Homewood, are going to be in the same position. Looking for other things and having to, look at other practical options that will meet our needs. May I say this, Jenny? Do you remember this summer when I was up at the top of the street trimming the shrubbery off the sidewalk?
Miss
Wilson. Yes.
That's not appropriate for a public hearing. If you will, just address the council for with your thoughts.
Okay,
You got about
absolutely.
a little bit over a minute left.
Okay. This map is the map that shows not just our street, but the whole community around us, area and community that is opposed to this proposal. The ones that are not marked were the ones they could not get a hold of. But this summer, Jenny came out to tell me that she was going to be presenting this proposal again to the council. And I told her that I felt like she would have the same reaction, the same opposition. And she said to me, well, I hope this go around my neighbors will be more considerate of my wants and my needs. And I don't think there's a person in this room that does not have empathy or understanding for her situation and the challenges that she faces, because we all do. And it may be us that might not be the ones to consider looking at what the ramifications of what this proposal has brought forth in this community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. David.
Hey, good evening. I'm David Kinman. I live at 3110, not to transpose the numbers, but 3110 Overton Drive. I'm the newest resident. I've almost lived there 3 months. It's our third house in Homewood, our third separate street in Homewood. It was, and we've always admired Overton Drive, and when a house became available, we pounced on it. And I can say with a certainty that that allure and that kind of prestige that we've always seen in the community of Overton Drive is a reality. I mean, I haven't met probably a quarter of the people behind me, but you know, they're our neighbors. And it's something that we vitally have to protect. We're going to be there a long, long time, and it's an environment that we need to protect, as Councilwoman Smith said, you know, for decades down the road. One thing, you know, if R5, if Ms. Allen's argument
R7.
about, I'm sorry, R7 about
Okay.
Orange leading to NPD, you know, that starts creep, right? And where does it stop? In my house, you know, we back up to the library, but we also kind of back up to those houses across from OLS that are also NPD currently. You know, and if the R7 just continues to creep, you know, what does that become? And so the only other thing I would say, you know, if you look back at the Heart of Homewood plan and the downtown redevelopment plan and that kind of thing, it stops at Mayfair Circle. And fundamentally, NPD is Overton Drive. And so that's what we need to keep it that way. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak for or against this item? Ms. Allen, you're raising your hand.
I just wanted to know if I could add something.
Very briefly, but yes, feel free to come up and. Make sure you get up to the microphone first so that everyone can hear you.
I read all 58 letters of opposition, and there's a great deal of confusion about my property lines and everything in general. R7s, if we can go back to the zoning, R7 is residential. The city has recently approved Cook Street for 6 R7s. It has 5 units on the corner of Firefighter and Huntington. Okay, there it is over there, the Firefighter. The Browning Walls has its own drive, but the one next to it doesn't. And then Cook Street is not on that map, but up over to the right more. It's all following this alley that is the line of demarcation between the multifamily and commercial and the southern aspect of single family. They all work well as buffers to corners. And Mr. Wygan, Ray Wygan, pulled this map, this survey for me from, this gives you a history. This is my original survey from the 20s, and it's lot 4, lot 3, lot 2, lot 1, clearly, right there facing Oxmoor. In 1939, Mr. Dunlap developed Overton Park Estates. And at that time, here I am, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Lot 2 had been deeded to the city of Homewood. It would later, in 1949, become a trafficked street known as Overton Drive, changing its name from Overton Avenue. So this is when it became trafficked. Before that, it was a dead-end kind of street. It did not really have access to Oxmoor in any way. But all of this time, the lots clearly are facing Oxmoor. It's not objectionable to have these R7s in with residential areas as corner units, as units that would transition and buffer the single-family homes. That's really one of their main purposes. It will provide for aging-in-place people, and it is for townhomes. The 2 larger ones are at the end because they have an enclosed balcony, but they're about 2,000 square feet each. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath. They're not large homes. They're not, at the same time, starter homes, because they will be very valuable, actually, for many citizens my age. And I hope that you take that into consideration. This has been an emotional event and experience for everybody. Those 58 letters are filled with emotion, and I can appreciate that. It has not been a fun experience to hear all these accusations and these falsehoods. But I feel that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm asking for equal rights for my property that the other properties and my only adjoining neighbor already enjoy.
Ms. Allen, before you sit down, let me ask you one question. Are you claiming that there is some change in the circumstances between what your property is currently used as versus what you are asking it to be rezoned as?
What do you mean change in circumstances?
I'm just asking, are there any changes in circumstances with the property and that you're arguing are part of the process, part of the reason for needing the rezone?
The reason, it's 10 years later. I'm aging. My body.
In other words, the circumstances deal with you and your health, not with the property, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much.
I
Mr.
can't take
President.
that
Yeah,
back.
I'm sorry, Ms. Andrus.
I wanted to comment on the Cook Street property, that if that's John Abernathy's property, we
I'm sorry.
rezone that. I wanted to address the Cook Street property.
Yes.
If you are talking about Mr. Abernathy's property, we downzone that from a commercial to an R7. So that was a downzone from a commercial piece of property. It was a house that was sitting on a commercial piece of property.
Right, I remember it.
So-
Kind of a yellow
so
house
that's-
that had been abandoned for a long time.
That's right,
Yeah.
but that's disingenuous to say that we're allowing this proliferation of R7s when in fact we downzone from a commercial to
Is the
to an
zoning going
R7.
the other direction?
Correct. Going the other direction.
Well, I think it's going to serve a much better purpose as an R7.
But the point you were trying to align that we have allowed an R7 when we went from commercial to R7, when you're asking to go from NPD to R7, so those are two different directions.
And I realize that it is a rare moment indeed when NPD would be rescinded and allowed to be something else.
Have you considered using your commercial property in downtown Homewood for this, for again, that would be a zoning in the correct direction, what we see.
My commercial property?
Correct.
Well, you know, there's been so much division over what is called mixed use. Would it not be mixed use
Yeah,
if I did that?
I want to
Okay,
stick,
sorry.
let's not talk about other
mean-
properties. Let's stick to what we got before us.
Yeah,
So,
so see,
let's, no, we're just going to talk about this property. So,
Yeah, that's why I thought this would be a more logical direction to go.
and I understand, I mean, I think y'all have each made your point, that you're talking about there are other R7 properties around this. With regard to the Cook Street property, that was a zoning from commercial to residential as
Yeah,
opposed
and
to
I have no idea.
upzoning from single family to multifamily.
This property, the 4 units, would be much closer in appearance to the firefighter Huntington
Got it.
units. That's really what it would be, and very similar to the ones on Windsor Drive.
Okay.
That I think there may be 10 or 12 of those that are the attached homes, because zoning had kind of changed from semi-attached to attached.
Right, okay.
So, no.
I didn't know if I should be up here to help explain things, but it sounds like a lot of people have made up their mind about this, even prior to this meeting and prior to trying to look at it objectively. It's emotional, like Ms. Allen said. So, you know, I come from a background where I've done homes in Seaside, in Rosemary Beach, where they look at these type of developments where they do kind of intermingle with one another. Some people look at it as progressive, but it's really retroactively looking to what developments used to be like. It's probably a bad word I heard in Homewood is new urbanism, but I'll just go ahead and say it because I think it's something that's a missed opportunity. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. This particular property, it may not change today under these circumstances. Someone with more money, someone with more opportunity, someone with more connection to the city, maybe will zone this commercial at some point in time. I mean, these are not historical homes. This is NPD. Neighborhood Preservation District is a little bit misleading. It's just as much as we're saying it's misleading, because what are we preserving? The houses can be torn down. There's no historical review of the homes. There's a lot of drainage issues that people are talking about
Okay.
constantly, so there's a
Here,
lot of
let's-
things
Okay, let me,
that.
I'm happy to let you talk some
No,
more
I-
about use
no.
if you want to talk about use. But
I
I think we're getting to the point where we're being
Yeah.
repetitive.
True.
But, and I do want to address a couple of things that were just brought up, but Ms. Allen, if you've got one more thing to say, I want us to
I
be
know.
respectful of everybody's time and give everyone else the time to speak.
Absolutely. The 4 units, just make it a more reasonable, I back up to 5, but 4 seems more reasonable, where I could live in Unit A, which is the one that's gonna be closest to Oxmoor. I have a sister, an older sister, that I would hope to be able to have one of the units, and then that would leave 2 other units. This is a very high-demand, popular thing, because there are an awful lot of people who want to stay in a familiar, beloved community that they've lived in for 40 years, and it helps the well-being of that person to do it. I really hope that there's a way we can come to a solution on this, because it would be an asset
Okay.
for the city and give a level of diversity.
All right, thank you. Let me just mention this, just because, Jamie, you just sort of brought it up. I don't want anyone to leave the impression, or because I know it's not true, this body is listening to the public hearing and the entire public hearing, as we are charged to do before we make up our mind about anything. The fact that people ask questions does not mean that they have made up their mind, and I don't want anyone to leave here with that impression.
Okay.
Secondly, I don't appreciate the comment about someone with more connections to the city. That was.
I apologize.
If everyone.
It's been emotional for me as well. Just, I apologize. I should not have said that here under this circumstances, and I want to
And look,
apologize.
let me finish what I got to say. I get that this is emotional. We have had many zoning issues up before us. I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and so and everyone up here has dealt with zoning issues and dealt with them many times. There's nothing more emotional than zoning issues that a city council deals with. I can say that with absolute certainty. So I know it's emotional, and I know it's personal, and I know it matters to everyone. And I appreciate that, at least to this point, we have handled this the way we hope people in Homewood handle it, which is that everyone speaks to the issues, and everyone speaks to, without making attacks on each other personally, because the fact that we disagree on something is not a problem. The fact that we passionately disagree on something, whether it's the people here tonight to speak to both sides of this issue, the fact that there's disagreement is not a problem. What is important is that everyone be provided with the opportunity to speak to it with regard to whatever their side is, and that we be able to ask questions, and that we remain with an open mind as we get the answers to those questions before we make up our mind, which is what we are doing here tonight. So I just want that to be clear. Want everyone to understand that. Don't want there to be any impression that anything other than that is happening.
Okay.
So.
And I apologize again. I really do.
I understand. Like I said, it's emotional. I
I've
get it. It's
Jenny
okay.
go through a lot.
It is an emotional thing.
It is.
And I have tried to present very objective facts without bringing in.
And let me say this. I think y'all have done a good job of presenting those facts. I think everyone understands what your position is, why you feel that way, and what you're basing that on. I get it. You're using the alley as a line of demarcation rather than Overton Drive, right?
Exactly.
And so you're trying to say that your property should be used based on that line of demarcation rather than Overton Drive. Everyone else thinks that Overton Drive is the line of demarcation. I get it, and I understand what you're saying about aging in place. I think there have been a number of comments here tonight about that as well, and the understanding of why that is something that, you know, can be useful to a community. So I think you've done a good job of explaining your situation and your position. I don't want you to feel like anyone doesn't understand it. I think I speak for everyone up here based on questions and lack of questions that everyone gets that. So what I'd like to do now, I know I've got at least one more speaker, so I'd like to finish out the public hearing so that we can have comments from council.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. My name is Catherine Shields. My husband, Jamie, and I have lived at 3121 Overton Drive for 37 years. My daughter lives in Homewood. My son lived in Homewood during his sabbatical for mission work. We love Homewood, and we appreciate all y'all are doing here. This is not a very pleasant task, I don't think, but I appreciate you doing it. I appreciate the issues of aging in place. I was meeting in the hour before I came here to make modifications to my home so that my husband and I can age in place. I appreciate Ms. Allen wanting to age in place. She asked us to view her plans before all the hearings took place. Some of the neighbors, including my husband and myself, viewed those plans in her home. We told her at that time we would oppose them. We pointed out to her that her home was perfect for aging in place, and everyone there said we would we would support her in building a ramp into her home. As it has been pointed out, Mr. Zimmerman had prior to her owning the home, to have a ramp into her home so that in the future when she needs it, she can get into her one-level home, which is perfect for aging in place. And as you brought out, there will be a lot of stairs. Ms. Allen says she will put in a elevator. That is not a requirement of the rezoning, but I appreciate the point that you made also that once it's rezoned, anything can be done with the property. I also appreciate your point about the line of demarcation. That was one of the things that made me come up to say, yes, I see what you're saying, Ms. Allen, but when you turn on the street, we're all on one street. It doesn't feel like that line of demarcation goes, as Ms. Allen is pointing it out, it is down Overton Drive. And she also said that it is not objectionable to have R7 next to NPD, but I would point out that everyone who stood up disagrees with the fact that R7 next to NPD is not objectionable, and I will speak for myself that I do find it objectionable when we're speaking of this property in particular that Ms. Allen owns. So I'm asking you to vote against rezoning it and to keep all of the property on Overton Drive NPD. And I know we have also come out in the past when people wanted to rezone that property on Oxmoor Road, and my hope is that everything that's NPD is going to stay NPD. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right. I don't see anyone else coming up, but just to make sure, is there anyone else to speak for or against this item? If not, then I will go and close the public hearing and ask if there are any comments or questions from council.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, Ms. Smith.
I'm going to talk again. So this is Ward 4, which is Julie and I's ward, and this is actually the second kind of what I would consider major rezones in our ward that has happened since I've been on council. I have been on council since 2014, like Alex, been doing this for a long time, and have been through a lot of these situations. And as I told Ms. Allen in our meeting, since I've been on council since 2014, we have never zoned an NPD piece of property to something other than NPD. We have been very sure in our decisions about keeping things NPD that are NPD. There was another project that happened, and it was actually zoned R5, and they wanted to rezone it commercial. The neighbors behind that property that were separated by the creek, and technically had some pretty good separation, they did not want it to be commercial. And we have in the past, we have made it very clear that we do want to listen to neighbors because it's where everyone lives. And we have to make decisions based on not just, like I said, not just today, not just tomorrow, but what that effect might be down the road. What that effect might be in 10 years, what that effect might be in 20 years. Because once a rezone is done, it doesn't change unless somebody comes back and rezones. And I will say this, I'm not sure how many people rezone something to something other than NPD and then come back and ask for it. Although last week, a guy did come. Jason asked to rezone something from a multifamily to single family, which we like a down zone. So this is something that it doesn't have anything to do with influence or connection or anything else. It has to do with what we think is the right thing for the neighborhood and listening to the people who live there, all the people who live there, including Miss Allen. And like I said before, I completely understand your desire to age in place. My husband and I aren't getting any younger, and we're going to have these same issues come up when we get to that point. And I think you have valid points. And listen, the design is beautiful. I've seen the renderings; they're gorgeous. They're very lovely. I just think that there are things that we have to consider about the long-term effect of this. That is not just not a you individual issue, but will affect that neighborhood long after some of these neighbors might not be there anymore. And I think that's part of our charge, is to think not just about today, but about what that effect might be in the future. So.
Yeah, Mr. Allen.
Ms. Allen, I really appreciate your renderings and your design. I'm actually supportive of thinking about how we think about senior living, how we think about townhomes, how we have mixed use density across the city. But I also do think it matters as to where. And I do think it matters as to what the neighbors feel. And thus it's difficult to be supportive of a plan when you have such opposition from your neighbors. So that's for me saying I'm not necessarily against thinking about townhomes and multifamily units as a principle, but I do think it matters as to where and when and how, and that we need to support and buy-in from our neighbors when we think about considering those changes. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Ms. Andrews.
I just want to say again, I said this at the Planning Commission, and I want to say again that I thank the neighbors for their thoughtful participation. Everyone here tonight, including Ms. Allen, has given us all a history lesson on the development of this town. And I just really, there's nothing more powerful than hearing from a room full of people. There really is not. I can't thank you all enough for being involved in this process and for the work that you put in, and your thoughtful letters. You know, it's one thing to get one letter, the same letter over and over and over again with different signatures on it. It's another thing to get 58 original letters with personal thoughts on how this impacts you, and that impacts us, and we appreciate that.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, and I wanted to address what you just said, Ms. Andrus. I mean, the reason I asked that, I just want to make sure I didn't miss any letters that came in, but I did read all of them, and I appreciate the feedback. I mean, it's our job to hear from everyone and hear from the presenter. You've gone to the Planning Commission, you've gone through the proper channels, and it's up to us to read those and make the best decision possible. And I've been on the council a long time, and I'm worried about the saturation within the city and the school. The schools are just really struggling in terms of, that saturation. So whatever we can do to maintain NPD, that's what I'm going to support.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Before we do the first reading, I just want to say this. I want to thank everyone who spoke to this issue. Thank you for being respectful. Thank you for the way that y'all have handled this. Like I said, these issues are never easy, so we very much appreciate both Ms. Allen and her team and the neighbors in terms of how you've approached this, how you've presented to us. So thank you. With that, Mr. Kendrick, will you give us the first reading?
Yes, sir. It's an ordinance to further amend the ordinance 1602 entitled the zoning ordinance and the zoning map of the city of Homewood. Whereas the Planning Commission of the City of Homewood did not recommend to the City Council that the property described herein be rezoned from its current classification, City of Homewood NPD Neighborhood Preservation District, to the City of Homewood's R7 attached dwelling unit zoning district. Whereas the council has determined and found it necessary to set a public hearing, at which time the applicant's proposal will be heard, which is on January the 30th, 2023. Now therefore, be it ordained by the City Council as follows, that the zoning ordinance and zoning map is amended to take the property described herein, legally described in Exhibit A, from its current zoning classification NPD Neighborhood Preservation District and rezone the property to R7, zoning attached dwelling unit. Section 2, that from and after the enactment of this ordinance, that the property described herein will be restricted by the uses applicable to R7 as defined in the Homewood zoning ordinance. Sections 3, that January the 30th, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. is a time and place fixed for the public hearing, at which time all persons who have an interest in such property and the application may be heard. Section 4, the city clerk has given notice as provided by law to all property owners within within 500 feet of the property proposed to be rezoned more than 15 days from the day of the public hearing. Whereas next section, if any part or provision of the ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all other parts of provisions or sections of the ordinance not affected thereby shall remain in full force and effect. Section 6, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor and city council or is otherwise becoming law.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kendrick. Let me pause here for just a second, because I know we got a lot of people here probably who have not been through this process before, so I want to explain what's about to happen. So in all likelihood, someone's about to make a motion for unanimous consent. That is a motion that just allows us to hear the issue tonight. So there's a procedural vote that comes before the substantive vote. So just so everyone understands, I expect that someone's about to make that motion. So there will be a procedural vote. If that procedural vote is unanimous, then we will proceed with the substantive vote. If not, then we will have that substantive vote at our next meeting.
And motions need to be made in the positive?
Yes.
So when you hear a motion that
Well,
says-
yeah, unanimous consent. So first, let's just do the unanimous
Yes.
consent.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I would make a motion for unanimous consent.
Second.
all right, so we have a motion from Ms. Smith and a second from Ms. Nelms.
One of us. Yeah.
And a roll call vote, please. Mr. Sechrist.
Counselor Gwaltney?
Yes.
Counselor Gear?
Yes.
Counselor Alleman? Yes. Counselor Wolverton?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Jones?
Yes.
Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Nelms?
Yes.
Counselor Andrews?
Yes.
Counselor Harder?
Yes.
President White?
Yes, all right, so that gives us unanimous consent. Would someone like to make a motion?
And now I will make the announcement that when we make motions, we have to make motions in the positive. You cannot make a negative motion, so just saying that. So I would make a motion to approve.
And I will second.
All right, motion for Ms. Smith, second for Ms. Andrus, and another roll call vote, please, Mr. Sechrist.
Counselor Gwaltney?
No.
Counselor Gear?
No.
Counselor Alleman? No. Counselor Wolverton?
No.
Counselor Sims?
No.
Counselor Jones? No. Counselor Smith?
No.
Counselor Nelms?
No.
Counselor Andrews?
No.
Counselor Harden?
No.
Counselor President White?
No. All right, so that is 0 to 11, and the motion fails, which means we will move on to our next item, 040123, public hearing set for February 13, 2023 at 6 p.m. for consideration to rezone 2900 16th Place South from R5 to NPD. The applicant is Johnny Gossett and Bonnie O'Bannon to permit the construction of a new single-family house.
Oh, guys.
Yeah. Or we can give them a second to...
Oh, my gosh. Johnny.
Okay. So once again, this is a public hearing set for February 13th for consideration to rezone 2900 16th Place South from R5 to NPD. The applicant is Johnny Gossett, Bonnie O'Bannon to permit the construction of a new single-family house. This comes to us from the Planning Commission with a vote of 7-0 with a favorable recommendation. So we will carry this item over for the public hearing set on February 13th, which brings us to our amended committee referral agenda. I would entertain a motion and a second for approval of the amended committee referral agenda.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Gwaltney, second for Ms. Nelms. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved 11-0, which brings us to other new business. 170123, request to set a public hearing and referral to the Public Safety Committee for consideration of condemnation of the dwelling structure at 1509 Beckham Drive, brought to us by Wyatt Pugh of our Inspections and Permits Department. We will set this public hearing, Mr. Kendrick, unless you tell me I'm wrong, for February 27th? Okay, at 6 p.m. All right, next item, 180123, request to set a public hearing for consideration of a variance to the sign ordinance to permit 6 electronic message board window signs at 1831 28th Avenue South, Suite 160, brought to us by Kyle Bass of Homewood Theater and Wyatt Pugh. We will set that public hearing for February 13 at 6 p.m. Next item, 190123, request to set a public hearing for consideration of a sign variance at 169 State Farm Parkway, brought to us by Megan Ellis of Advanced Sign and Lighting and McAllister's Deli and Wyatt Pugh. We will also set that public hearing for February 13th. Next item, 200123, request for consideration of an ABC 020 restaurant retail liquor for STS Family LLC DBA Sam's Super Sandwiches located at 1830 29th Avenue South, Suite 155, brought to us by Melody Salter. Mr. Gwaltney, I understand that we have already received letters of no objection from both fire and police?
I've received the letter of no objection from the police, but I've not received anything from fire.
Okay.
But I would make the motion that pending the receipt of the fire no objection letter that it get approved.
Perfect. All right, we have a motion. Motion from Mr. Gwaltney, second from Mr. Sims. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And that is 11-0. That is approved. Next item, 210123, request for consideration of an ABC 160 special retail, more than 30 days for DDC Hotels, Inc., DBA Drury Inn and Suites Birmingham Southwest, located at 160 State Farm Parkway. This deals with a transfer of ownership. It's brought to us by Melody Salter. I think same thing here. We got one, but not the other.
I haven't seen either, but I talked to Ms. Salter about this, and I will also make the motion to approve pending receipt of both letters from fire and police.
Perfect. We have a motion from Mr. Gwaltney and a second from Mr. Wolverton. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And so that is 11-0 and is approval of the having no objection. All right, next item, 220123, request for consideration of approval of vouchers for the period of January 10, 2023 through January 30, 2023, brought to us by Robert Brigette and Melody Salter. Mr. Jones, this is Mr. Alamont.
Yeah, I yield to Councilor Alamont.
Yes, I was able to review the vouchers, and all for the exception of one, I'd like to approve their acceptance.
You've got, there's one exception that you're holding? Okay. All right, so we have a motion for Mr. Alamont and a second for Mr. Jones. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is 11-0, and it's been so long since we did a resolution. 14, is that right? So resolution 2314, which brings us to the end of the agenda tonight. Mayor couldn't be with us tonight. JJ, you have anything that you need to tell us? All right, then we will start with Mr. Gwaltney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will set public safety immediately following finance next Monday, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, next Monday. And other than that, I have no comments. Well, actually, I take that back. I do have one comment. I agree with the thoughtful dialogue that was presented tonight. This not being an award one for once, it's been interesting to get to sit and listen, and it, no, nothing personal, but there wasn't as much emotion when it's not in your backyard getting to listen to both sides of the story. But I see where you're coming from and the need for the age-in-place housing, like Councilor Alamont mentioned. We do need to find places where it's amenable to the neighbors and it fits. But overall, I like, this is the way it should be done. It's just, it makes me so happy and boulders my spirit in people whenever I see dialogue go like it did tonight for the most part. So thank you to the public for showing up and having a good dialogue. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Gear.
Oh, I agree with all of that, and I also want to thank you, President Wyatt, for your comments. I really appreciated those, and I thought they were timely and needed to be said. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Couple of things, JJ. Thank you so much for helping brick in a part of the sidewalk at in Edgewood Business District that had been a mess for several months. And I called JJ one day, and the next day it was fixed. So I really appreciate that. And the Salamander Festival was awesome. Friends of Shade Creek put that on this weekend at the high school. I had not been out there since the remodel, and the high school looks beautiful. And those salamanders are awesome, and I hope that none of the construction we do over there on that mountainside will harm their living environment or habits too much, because they're great. They're special for Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Almond.
Yes, I just wanted to congratulate Debbie Fout for having the computer lab named after her in her honor. So I think that's really fitting considering her great contribution to our city and our library. I also am happy that we're going to get a bid date on Del Chris. It's coming soon. And finally, you know, I just really appreciate everyone who's given their time during the city manager ad hoc hearings. Councilor Wyatt and President Wyatt and I have spent some time there, and I think we're making great progress there. So thank you everyone for their involvement.
Thank you. Mr. Wolverton.
Unless I missed it, I don't believe there was a public works item.
I don't think so.
Okay, so we will not, well, yeah. I have not heard from Wyatt about our Wellington View Road. Is that the only item that we had kind
I
of
think
held
that's the
over?
only item
I've
you've
heard
got
no
left.
updates, and it sounded like it was going to be a process of time, so I will plan to not hold that meeting next week. Happy belated birthday to JJ. Hope he had a good one. Sounds like he did. But JJ, you do a lot for the city, and you've done so for a very long time, and so we appreciate all that you do. And then I just wanted to do a little quick follow-up, but the spelling bee for the district was a week ago Monday. There were 6 or 7. I didn't realize that we had kids from Montessori school and everywhere else as well. So I went into it thinking, how can there be more than just 3 elementary school kids? Well, there was a middle school kid there too. Anyway, they all did great. We're obviously really proud of Ruby. And the kiddo that won it actually was one of Wesley's little friends from the Bell Center when he first started out there years ago, named Stark. And we found out years ago when they were hanging out at the Bell Center and he came over for a birthday party that they actually have the same house, just reverse layout over in Edgewood. So just a small little tidbit. Anyway, it was good to see them. Always fun to see other people's kiddos grow up too. And obviously wish Stark well going on to the, I guess county, I believe is the next one. So smart and sharp little kid. Anybody that goes into the origins of words and it actually helps them is clearly doing something right. So,
absolutely. Thank you very much. Mr. Sims.
Thanks. Just as a reminder, Beautification Board meets next on February 13th. And as you referenced, we also have an open position or vacancy right now for Ward 2. So if anyone knows anyone in Ward 2, please encourage them to apply. Also had the honor to attend, as did some of you, the mayor's State of the City address back on January 17th. It was really fantastic to hear everything awesome going on with the city, with revenue. And one of the most fun parts of that meeting is the recognition of the employees. And our very own Bo Segrist won Employee of the Year for the city. And also Craig Bullock was named Firefighter of the Year, and Vernar Hughes was Police Officer of the Year. So grateful, though, for all of our city employees, the mayor, and definitely the honorees from the January 17th State of the City address. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Finance will be at 5, and a couple of quick comments. One, we had the Frostbite tournament this weekend for tennis, and they call that for a reason because I almost froze to death on Friday night. But the boys came in 5th overall out of, I think, 18 teams, and the girls came in 6th, I believe. So really proud of them. And then I'll make one quick comment that Ms. Gear brought up, and that is, I was on the original group that voted for the Salamander Crossing, and Mr. Kendrick can remember that. And I made some comment that night, and I said, of all the votes that I've made throughout my time on the council, this is going to go down as really an influential vote. And I was saying it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but the Associated Press picked it up, and they posted it and said, Mr. Jones supports environmental issues within Homewood, and did a whole article on it. It was one of the greatest things ever. And I say, you never know what you're going to vote on up here is going to get picked up by somebody. And I was very proud that we made a crossing for them so that they could go and spawn across the street. So freedom, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's all I have. And congratulations to Bo and all the other winners. So proud of Homewood right now. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Smith?
Yes, I will set special issues to follow public safety, and yes, congratulations to Bo. He is the quiet man in the city clerk's office who is just always hustling and working and taking care of everybody, and we so appreciate him. And all of the staff, all of our staff people are just amazing. And tonight, for Miss Allen and for all the neighbors who really conducted themselves in the most respectful way. We have had situations where that has not been the case, so when it happens, it is very appreciated, and I think it just leaves everybody with a little bit better taste in their mouth than might otherwise be. And I know this has been hard and long, but we thank you for your persistence and for your respect that you showed in the presentation of your project. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Nelms?
No comments tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Andrus?
Okay, so no P&D. Congratulations to Bo. It was fun getting to meet Mrs. Bo. That was fun. That was fun. I wanted to have everybody put on your calendar for February the 10th. I'm going to make this announcement for the mayor, if he doesn't mind, as well as for Mr. Smith, who is not here tonight either, or had to leave early. February the 10th at 11 o'clock will be the groundbreaking for Phase 2 of the Shades Creek Greenway. I got to tell you the background of that story. So we have technically already broken ground. And so Carolyn reached out, and, you know, I'm in the running community, and so I hear all the time, like, when's Phase 2 coming? When's Phase 2 coming? I mean, this is a really big deal. I mean, you guys know, you've been around forever. It's a really big deal. It's finally here. I literally have in my, speaking of Salamander Festival, I literally have in my memories from 4 years ago, Carolyn getting the award at the Salamander Festival because we were finally moving on the Phase 2 of the Greenway. So here we are in 2023. So she messaged me last week, and she's like, are we doing a groundbreaking? And I'm like, I don't know. And I reach out to Kale and Patrick, and Kale, as only an engineer can say, says, well, we've already broken ground. So I say, hey, Mayor, this is a really big deal. Like, we need to celebrate this. So he says, okay, I can do that. So I said to Kale, and then Kale says, I don't really think that he supports that. And I was like, that is high praise coming from Patrick. Like, the way he said that, like, you know, yes, that is a firm yes from Patrick. So let's go with this. So now I'm calling it the fake groundbreaking.
Can I interrupt you? What
Yes.
time did you say?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So February 10th at 11 o'clock, we have a fake groundbreaking. Carolyn sent us a proof of the invitation today, so that should go out. And if you guys have anyone that you want to include, I think Jane is going to say a few words. It's something to celebrate because, like I said, I get asked every single day when that's coming. And I made a little, Dean Thornton and I are the admins on the Shades Creek Greenway page on Facebook. And I made just a little post on it the other day, and everyone was like, when's it coming? Oh my gosh, when's it coming? So, I mean, this is a really big deal for Homewood. And like you said, it's a good time to be in Homewood because this is a big deal. Okay, I also wanted to give an update on the Jefferson County Council Coalition, JC3. We had a meeting on Friday. I know you guys toured the Mental Health Authority, Nick, on Thursday. I ended up not joining. Barry and I had done that in December, so I went ahead and just waited for that. Let you guys go on that. But we had a meeting on Friday. Wanted to let you know that the word of the year now is not regional cooperation, per Steve Ammons, is regional collaboration, because cooperation makes it sound like you're losing something, but collaboration means we're all working together. We had a couple of new people join us, one from Helena, who's actually on Jimmy Stevens' staff, and the projects that we got to hear from James Coker, he spoke, Homewood's own James Coker, and then we talked about, we're moving forward with some trails that we're going to help Freshwater Land Trust. They've got a $4 million grant that they got from Terry Sewell's office that we're going to connect the high ore line to the Crossplex, and transportation. Daryl O'Quinn is heading up, and so we're really looking to get with our delegation and try to work on some of the state funding for transportation. So I know that was a lot. I also want to send my prayers to Berkeley and Gina for Gina's mom. They've had so much they've had to deal with, and just we love them so much. So anyway, that's all I have. I know
Thank
that
you
was
very
a lot.
much.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Harden.
I have nothing to say after
sorry.
that.
I know, that was a lot.
All right. Well, just a couple of things. One, and a couple of them are just going to echo what's already been said. First, congratulations, Bo. We appreciate all that you do. and congratulations to the other employees as well. Secondly, thank you again. I think this was a good example of how an issue is supposed to become before the city, how the city is supposed to consider an issue, and Ms. Smith's right, it doesn't always happen that way. So, you know, the more times it does, the better off we are. And then lastly, I would like to wish a happy 50th birthday to my bride. She is 50 today and not celebrating it with me. So she's actually down at the beach celebrating it with some other girlfriends. And good for her because I was going to be here. And so I just appreciate everything she does for me and supports me in everything that I do. And the poor woman has had to spend more of her 50 years with me than without me. So she deserves a lot of credit, and I love her dearly. So anyway, happy birthday, Megan. With that, we are adjourned, and we will see everyone in a couple weeks.
Are you gonna send her the videotape?
Yeah,